It's Catherine Endy, the Family Life Coach. Welcome back. Today we are going to be talking about boundaries, and I'm excited about this topic because I think this is one that I definitely get a lot of questions about, and a lot of people have difficulty with setting boundaries with their kids and understanding what those boundaries are. So let's dive right in. One thing that I want to start with is talking about the fact that many of us in our generation were not raised with excellent boundaries. So if you're coming to this feeling like, you have feelings about boundaries, or you're not sure how to set them clearly and kindly with your children, or you're not really so great at that with your partner or your friends, just know that that's common, and that a lot of people in our generation were not necessarily raised with great boundaries. So I want to just offer you some compassion and commiseration, and also to encourage you to offer yourself some compassion around that, because this can be difficult and it's something we have to learn, especially if we weren't raised with excellent emotional boundaries and boundaries in relationships. So I want to set the stage for that to say, if you have not mastered this yet, do not fret. There's lots of room for growth, and we have our whole lifetimes to work on these things. So I love to use the Brené Brown definition of boundaries. If you're not familiar with Brené Brown, she is a PhD in social work and a shame and resilience researcher and lecturer and author. And she's wonderful. And her definition of boundaries is simply an expression of what's okay and what's not okay. That's it. It's very simple. So boundaries doesn't mean rules. It doesn't mean being unkind. It doesn't mean closing yourself off from other people. It really just means being clear about what's okay and what's not okay. And so again, if folks have not had amazing experience with this in the past, it can be really tricky to figure out how to navigate this and how to set clear boundaries with your children. For a lot of people, when they set a boundary with other people, they've had the experience that the other person doesn't like it, and then they have emotional upset, and then it causes conflict, right? And so some of us shy away from setting boundaries because we've had that experience of, I set a boundary, somebody didn't like it, and then there's conflict, or there's discord, or the other person's upset and we don't know how to handle it, right? This kind of goes back to our conversation about emotions and, how we handle emotions. So it's a skill that we have to learn in adulthood if we don't already have it. And the reason this is important in parenting, this is obviously generally important in relationships, and if you haven't had great experience with it, it's something we need to work on. But the reason this is so important for children is that children thrive on and feel safe when they have clear boundaries. So, a lot of us, I'm certainly a parent who's not big on a lot of rules. I think it's really important not to be controlling. I want my children to learn how to manage their own behavior, and, obviously within clear guidelines, but I know that being super strict about the rules and that sort of thing isn't helpful, at least in our family. And so that's not really what it's about. It's really about letting folks around you know what's okay and what's not okay. And children really feel safe in that container of knowing where is the boundary, right? And if you've got little kids, under age 10, certainly 2, 3, 4-year-olds who are just starting to feel that out, they're testing the boundary, right? They want to know, where is that line? What's okay and what's not okay? They're feeling that out, right? And I think some of us interpret that as negative behavior or defiance, or, wow, they're really pushing the boundary, and we see that as a negative thing. But the truth is, they're just looking for the boundary. They're looking for the line in the sand because they want to feel safe. So they want to know, can I get away with doing this? Can I, take a snack from the cabinet without asking? Can I jump on the bed? Whatever the thing is that you feel like, oh, they're really pushing the boundary. Can I hit my sister? They are looking for us as adults to provide that safe container to let them know that's not okay. you have to ask before you get a snack, whatever it is. And so I think reframing that kind of behavior in terms of look that the child is looking for a boundary for reassurance and safety might help us to be able to reframe their behavior a little bit. So let me know if that resonates, if that whole idea of, does setting a boundary, does seeing a child's behavior as pushing the boundary feel different to you than seeing it as looking for the boundary, looking for that safety? So I think that's a helpful reframe. It's helping us to understand the child's perspective, that they are really looking for safety, that they have a right to know what's okay and what's not okay, and they have a right to know what we expect of them. So the other thing I want to say about boundaries that I think is so important and maybe a little bit different than what you've heard before is that boundaries start with us, right? And so my friend Carrie Conti used to say, the boundary lies within. And what that means is you have to first find out where your boundary is, meaning you have to find out what you're okay with in this moment and what you're not okay with in this moment. And that can change from moment to moment, right? Like it might be that, you have a rule that your child can't jump on the bed, for example. Or maybe it's not a rule, you've never had to deal with this before, they're 3 and they've never asked to jump on the bed before, for example, and they say, can I jump on the bed? And you say, right now I don't feel very regulated and I don't feel like I can keep you safe, so I'm going to say no jumping on the bed right now. And then tomorrow it might come up again and you say, you know what, I'm feeling pretty good and I can sit right here and make sure you don't fall and hit your head, so yeah, we can jump on the bed today. And I get a lot of questions about this because like, oh, don't we have to be consistent and doesn't it have to be the same every time? And my feeling about that is that as long as your boundary and what you say to your child is in alignment with your internal boundary and how you're feeling, then it doesn't really matter whether it's consistent or not. Now, certainly there are going to be safety rules. I'm sure that you have rules in your family about, some things that are just unequivocally unacceptable and that sort of thing, and I think that's fine. But if there are some things that you're like, I haven't really considered that, or for example, running away from you, like if you're in a big park and there's no one around and there's plenty of space and there's no cars, it might be fine and wonderful for your child to run far away from you and get that experience of being out of your reach. But if you're in a downtown of a city or walking in a crowded shopping mall, back when we used to do that kind of thing, you might want to keep your child safe and you would say, you need to hold my hand right now. So it's not that you have a rule, you never ever run far away from me. It's that the rule and the boundary lies within you and within the context of the situation. So I think these are helpful reminders in learning, like, what does it mean to have a boundary and to set a boundary? And this goes back, just as all the stuff we've been talking about emotions, it all comes back to us as adults being in tune with our own internal state and knowing, can I check in with myself and feel, is it okay? Do I feel safe with my child running away from me, running off, down the street or down, in the park? Does that feel safe to me right now? I know for me, when I'm in downtown Baltimore City and my kids, even though they're older, I'm like, you stay right close to me. I feel safer if you're close to me. But if we're just walking around our neighborhood, of course, it's fine for them to roam a little bit. So it really is about checking in and feeling your own internal state. How am I feeling? Does this feel okay to me? And if you get practiced at this, it's pretty easy to have an inner response that's very clear. So, if your child asks you if they can do something, or maybe they're just doing something and you need to check in with yourself, is that okay or is it not okay? The better you become at checking in with your own internal state, the better you are at setting a clear boundary, because your inner state is in alignment with what you're saying to your child. And that's the stuff that little kids in particular are especially attuned to. Little children are attuned far more to your emotional resonance than they are to the words that you're saying. So if you're saying, yeah, that's okay with me, but inside your energy is like, oh, actually, it's kind of not okay with me. Little kids in particular really pick up on that, and so then their behavior might be strange or out of alignment or crazy because they can sense that you're not in alignment with your own boundary. So this does take some practice. It does take some attunement to your own inner state, which requires a little bit of mindfulness, which we'll talk about in some future videos for sure. This is my jam right here, is talking about attunement and mindfulness and emotion regulation. So I hope these thoughts and tips are helpful for you to start thinking about what it means to set clear boundaries with your children. I'll end with one final thought, which is that a boundary should always be firm and kind. So we can set boundaries without shaming, without blaming, without making our child feel bad, without being harsh. There is a way to set a boundary that is clear and kind and firm, and we are doing a kind thing for our child or for anyone we're in relationship with by setting a clear and firm boundary. We're doing them a service by doing that because we're letting them know what's okay and what's not okay.